moment ago, we were discussing the poor attitude of Derek Coleman in regard to missing practices 2 weeks ago.
Came to my junior high, he was talking slick. I was like, yeah, I ain't really messing with you. He gave me his number and stuff.
When Jason Williams missed practice.
But Kane's a franchise player.
Yeah. Whoop-de-damn do.
We won 31 out of 82. Then our second year.
You know what the NBA stands for? Big money, luxury cars, mansions, and living the dream. But here's the thing about Darius Miles, a guy who went from NBA to burgers after earning over $60 million. He's not alone. Turns out that making millions doesn't mean keeping millions. In fact, a huge number of NBA players end up broke within just a few years of hanging up their jerseys. So what's going on here? Why do so many guys who earn more money in 1 year than most people see in a lifetime end up with nothing? Let's find out. The numbers are shocking. Studies show that 60% of NBA players face serious money problems or file for bankruptcy within 5 years of retiring. Think about that for a second. These aren't people making minimum wage. These are millionaires. Some of them made $60 million, $90 million, even over $100 million during their careers. And yet, most of them lose it all. This isn't just about buying too many cars or throwing too many parties. The real story is way more complicated and way more interesting. Let's start with the guy from the thumbnail, Darius Miles. This man was drafted 3rd overall straight out of high school. He was supposed to be the next big thing, and for a while, he was living that life. During his career, Miles earned over $60 million. That's generational wealth right there. But then his career got cut short by injuries. His income stopped, and here's where things went wrong. Miles had debt. He had made bad investments. He had legal problems piling up. When he filed for bankruptcy in 2016, he reported owing about $1.6 million. Now, $1.6 million might not sound like that much compared to $60 million, but here's the key. When your income suddenly stops and you still have bills to pay, even a small debt becomes impossible to handle. Miles couldn't adjust his spending after his career ended. The money kept going out, but nothing was coming in. And just like that, $60 million disappeared. What do you think is the biggest mistake these players made? Was it trusting the wrong people, spending too much, or something else? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Now let's talk about Latrell Sprewell. This guy is famous for one of the wildest money decisions in NBA history. Sprewell made nearly $100 million during his career. That's enough to set up your family for generations if you're smart about it. But in 2004, he got offered a $21 million contract extension. That's $21 million guaranteed. Most people would jump at that offer, but not Sprewell. He turned it down. Why? Because he said he had a family to feed. He actually said that. He felt insulted by the offer and walked away. That decision ended his career. No team wanted to deal with him after that, so his income stream just stopped. But the real problem wasn't just turning down the contract. The problem was that Sprewell had built a lifestyle that needed constant money coming in. He owned a huge mansion. He had a yacht worth millions. All these things cost money to maintain every single month. Property taxes, maintenance, insurance, it all adds up. When the paycheck stopped, those bills didn't. Within a few years, his yacht got repossessed. His home went into foreclosure. Everything he owned started disappearing. The lesson here is simple. When you have big fixed costs, you need a steady income to support them. Take away that income and everything falls apart fast. Kenny Anderson is another perfect example of how money can vanish. Anderson was the number 2 pick in the draft. He made more than $63 million during his career. But by 2005, shortly after he retired, he filed for bankruptcy. How does that happen? Well, Anderson lived large, really large. He owned 8 cars at one point. 8. He was spending $41,000 every single month even after he stopped playing. That's almost $500,000 a year just to maintain his lifestyle. But the spending was only part of the problem. Anderson got divorced 3 times. He had 8 children. And he owed child support to multiple women. Those payments were court-ordered, which means he couldn't get out of them even if he wanted to. Child support and alimony don't care if you're retired or broke. You still have to pay. For Anderson, these legal bills ate through whatever money he had left. His combination of wild spending and non-stop legal payments destroyed his fortune completely. Antoine Walker earned more than anyone we've talked about so far. Over $108 million. That's an insane amount of money. But Walker filed for bankruptcy in 2010. The reasons are pretty clear when you look at his situation. First, Walker loved to gamble. And we're not talking about a little poker with friends. He had massive gambling debts. Second, he supported a huge group of friends and family. Everywhere he went, he brought an entourage. All those people expected him to pay for everything. Flights, hotels, meals, it all came out of Walker's pocket. But the thing that really destroyed him was his financial advisor. Walker was busy. He played basketball 9 months a year. He traveled constantly. So, like many players, he hired someone to handle his money. The problem? He hired a friend of a friend, someone he trusted because of a personal connection, not because they were qualified. Walker gave this person complete control over his finances. Total control. The advisor set up something called Walker Ventures and started making real estate deals. These deals were funded by bank loans that Walker personally guaranteed. That means if the deals went bad, Walker was on the hook for all the debt. And guess what? The housing market crashed. Suddenly, Walker was staring at $20 million in debt. His advisor ended up going to prison, but by then, the damage was done. Walker lost everything.
Derek Coleman made over $91 million as the #1 pick in 1990, but he also filed for bankruptcy in 2010. Coleman's story is a little different because his intentions were actually good. He wanted to help his hometown of Detroit. The city was struggling, and Coleman thought he could make a difference by investing in local businesses. So he opened a pizzeria, then a bowling alley. He poured his money into these projects, hoping they would succeed and help revitalize the community. But here's the problem. Running a restaurant or a bowling alley takes serious work. These are high-cost businesses that need constant attention. You have to manage staff, deal with suppliers, handle maintenance, and compete with other businesses. Coleman was either playing basketball or recently retired. He didn't have the time or the expertise to make these businesses work. So instead of making money, these investments just drained his accounts. Month after month, he had to pour more cash in just to keep them running. Eventually, he ran out of money to give. His good intentions couldn't save him from bad business decisions. So what's really going on here? Why does this keep happening? The truth is, there are some big problems built into the system that make it way too easy for players to lose everything. First, let's talk about taxes. When you hear that a player signed a $10 million contract, you might think they're taking home $10 million. Wrong. The government takes a huge chunk right off the top. Federal taxes can be as high as 37%. Then there's state taxes. If you play in California, that's another 13%. And then there's something called jock tax. Every time a player plays a game in a different state, that state charges them income tax for that game. It's incredibly complicated. On top of all that, the NBA takes 10% of every player's salary and puts it in something called escrow. This is supposed to make sure players get their fair share of league revenue. But if the league doesn't make as much money as expected, players can lose that 10% completely. So a player making $1 million in a high-tax state might only take home around $365,000 after all the deductions. That's a huge difference from $1 million. Another big problem is what happens psychologically when someone gets rich overnight. Most people spend decades building up to their peak earning years. They learn about money slowly over time. But NBA players go from being broke college students to millionaires basically overnight. They don't have time to learn, they don't have experience, and they're surrounded by people telling them to spend, spend, spend. There's also the competitive mindset. Athletes are trained to take risks and go for the big win. That mindset works great on the court, but it's terrible for investing. Investing is about patience, safety, and slow, steady growth. But players want the home run. They want the big, flashy investment that makes them even richer. So they fall for risky deals that almost always fail. Then there's the people around them. Family and friends suddenly expect the player to take care of everyone, and the player feels pressure to say yes. After all, these are the people who supported them before they made it big. But supporting 10 or 20 people gets expensive fast. And then there are the financial advisors. Some of them are honest, but way too many are scammers who see rich young athletes as easy targets. They promise big returns and then either steal the money or make terrible investments. By the time the player realizes what's happening, it's too late. The average NBA career lasts less than 5 years. That's a tiny window to make all the money you'll ever earn from basketball. Compare that to a normal career that might last 40 years. A doctor or lawyer has decades to build wealth, make mistakes, learn lessons,
and recover from setbacks. But a basketball player has to get everything right immediately. One bad decision in year 2 of your career can haunt you for the next 50 years of your life. And remember, many of these guys entered the league straight from high school, or after just 1 year of college. They were teenagers, or barely in their 20s when they signed contracts worth millions. At that age, most people are still figuring out how to do laundry and cook basic meals. These players were suddenly managing complex financial portfolios and dealing with tax attorneys and investment advisors. The learning curve was impossible. But here's the good news. Not every player goes broke. Some of them figure it out, and their stories show us exactly what works. Let's talk about Magic Johnson. Magic made good money as a player, but nothing compared to what he's worth now. Today, Magic Johnson Enterprises is worth over $1 billion. How did he do it? He didn't try to start businesses from scratch like Coleman did. Instead, he partnered with companies that were already successful. He became a franchisee for Starbucks and owned 125 stores. He partnered with Sony to create Magic Johnson Theaters. He bought into the Los Angeles Dodgers. These were smart, safe investments in proven business models. Magic used his fame and his understanding of the market to make deals that actually made sense. He didn't gamble. He didn't take crazy risks. He built wealth slowly and carefully through partnerships with major corporations. And then there's Junior Bridgman. This might be the most impressive story of all. Bridgman's highest salary during his 12-year NBA career was only $350,000. That's nothing compared to the guys we talked about earlier. But today, Bridgman is worth over $1.4 billion. Yes, billion with a B. How is that even possible? Discipline. During his playing career, Bridgman saved his money. He didn't blow it on cars and jewelry. And in the offseason, instead of partying, he studied business. He learned everything he could about the fast food industry. When he retired, he started buying Wendy's and Chili's franchises. Not one or two, hundreds. He also became a Coca-Cola bottler. These weren't sexy investments, but they were reliable. They generated steady cash flow, and they were scalable, meaning he could keep growing without taking on huge risk. Bridgman proved that you don't need to make $100 million to become a billionaire. You just need discipline and a smart plan. So, what's the takeaway from all of this? Money doesn't protect you from going broke. In fact, making a lot of money fast can actually make things worse if you're not prepared. The players who lost everything made a few key mistakes. They trusted the wrong people. They took on too much debt. They tried to maintain lifestyles they couldn't afford. They made emotional decisions instead of smart ones. And they didn't plan for the day when the paychecks would stop. But the players who succeeded did the opposite. They were disciplined. They invested carefully. They built teams of trusted, qualified professionals. And they understood that real wealth isn't about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. The NBA needs to do more to protect players. The Players Union runs programs to teach rookies about money, but clearly it's not enough. There needs to be mandatory oversight of financial advisors. There needs to be required training that goes beyond just one session. And players need to understand from day one that their careers are short and their money needs to last a lifetime. Financial success after basketball is absolutely possible, but it requires treating money management like another skill to master, just like shooting or defense. The difference is that this skill determines the rest of your life. If you found this story interesting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We've got more incredible stories about money, success, and the lessons we can all learn. Thanks for watching.